A millionaire husband pushed his pregnant black wife off a cliff, and the world believed it was an accident. But she survived, and for 6 long years, she carried the pain of a man she loved trying to kill her while he rose to fame, pretending to grieve her death. Tonight, you'll hear the truth she brought back with her, and the revenge she didn't just dream of, she planned. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're tuning in from. We love seeing how our stories connect people from all around the world. Your comments and thoughts bring this community to life, and we're so grateful to have you on this journey with us. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, let's begin. Maya Winfrey hung between life and death, her body broken, the icy rush of river water swallowing every breath she tried to pull in. The world above her blurred into streaks of fading light, and the last thought that pressed through her collapsing consciousness wasn't fear. It was the question that carved a wound deeper than any in her skin. Why had Damon Carter, Atlanta's rising star, her husband, the man she trusted with her unborn son, pushed her off that cliff? Moments earlier, the world had looked completely different. Damon had asked her to stand at the edge, his voice warm, steady, the same voice that once made her feel safe. "Let me get a picture of you," he had said. A strong black mother standing on top of the world. She'd smiled, believing him, believing the man she had loved since he was a nobody with nothing but big dreams. The sun was sinking into a glowing red horizon when his phone buzzed. He glanced down. A message appeared. Tonight or never. No loose ends. He swiped it away before she noticed, but something in his face flickered too fast for her to read, but enough to crack the air around them. He stepped behind her, pretending to adjust the angle of the shot. Those words he had whispered minutes earlier about being sorry, about wanting a fresh start, felt strangely hollow now, as if they had been rehearsed for someone else's ears, not hers. Maya inhaled deeply, resting her palms on her stomach. 6 months along, she felt her son move beneath her hand. She didn't know she was already seconds away from losing everything. Then it happened. A sudden, brutal force slammed into her back. No warning, no hesitation. Just the violent truth of a decision Damon had already made long before they arrived at that mountain. Her body pitched forward, her scream stolen by the wind. As she fell, she reached for him out of instinct, out of the old belief that he would save her. But the last thing she saw was Damon standing above, his face cold and emptied of the man she once knew. She crashed through jagged rocks and slid down the steep slope before the river claimed her completely. The impact knocked the world into darkness. No sensations. No sound, no dreams. Only the quiet end of everything she thought she understood. Up on the cliff, Damon sprinted toward the ledge. His performance began instantly panting, shouting her name, forcing panic into his voice. He dialed 911 with shaking hands, letting tears spill exactly when they should. By the time rescuers arrived, he had transformed himself into the grieving husband, the picture-perfect image of a man shattered by tragedy. Cameras would later capture that same image, the moving story of a millionaire widower whose black pregnant wife died in a tragic accident. And behind all of it lay the truth he never intended anyone to discover. The insurance money worth millions, the clean slate for his political ambitions, the freedom to stand beside another woman without scandal shadowing him. As night fell, search crews combed the cliffs in vain. Damon stood among them, wrapped in a blanket, clutching his chest as if grief were suffocating him. But miles below, in the darkness of the valley, a group of hikers stumbled upon a body drifting near the rocks. A woman, barely breathing, still alive. They shouted for help as they pulled her toward the shore. Her fingers twitched. A faint gasp escaped her lips. Maya Winfrey had not died, and the story Damon Carter believed he had ended was only just beginning. She woke not to light, but to voices slicing through the fog. "She's got a pulse weak, but it's there," someone said. Arms lifted her from the water. A stretcher rattled. Sirens wailed, then nothing again. When Maya resurfaced the next time, she wasn't by the river. She was in a cramped emergency room in a rural hospital, surrounded by hands working frantically to keep her alive. Bright lights flashed above her as nurses rushed in and out, calling for blood, for oxygen, for someone to monitor the baby's heart rate. She couldn't open her eyes fully. She couldn't speak. Her body quivered under the weight of injuries she couldn't understand. She only heard a voice close to her ear. "Stay with us. Stay with us." Among the crowd of medical staff was Loretta Freeman, a seasoned nurse with steady eyes, and a voice warm enough to anchor anyone trying not to slip away. She noticed immediately the absence of identification. No ID, no phone, no name, stitched into clothing. A pregnant woman with no identity and no one to claim her. Loretta felt something stir in her, the familiar ache she'd learned to recognize as responsibility. Hours turned into a long, merciless night. Maya's vitals swung dangerously, her consciousness fading in and out until it finally gave out. When morning arrived, the doctors marked her chart with 2 devastating words, Jane Doe, and with that, Maya disappeared from the world she once belonged to. Damon, the police, the rescue teams, none of them knew she was lying in a hospital bed, still breathing, still fighting. Days later, her condition worsened. Trauma from the fall triggered early labor. The room filled with urgency as the medical team surrounded her, moving swift and silent. Loretta held Maya's limp hand and whispered, "You have to stay alive. Your child needs you." Moments later, the cry of a newborn broke through the chaos. A premature baby boy, tiny but strong, came into the world. But Maya did not wake. By law, infants of unidentified mothers were transferred into protective custody. The baby was carried away to the neonatal unit, tagged with a number instead of a name, a life separated from its mother before either had a chance to understand what they'd survived. Weeks passed before Maya's eyes finally opened again. She stared at the ceiling, confused, disoriented, sensing only a heavy emptiness in her body. When she tried to speak, no words formed. When she tried to remember, nothing stayed. Her past was blank. Her name was gone. And yet something inside her trembled with the leftover echo of a terror she couldn't shape. Loretta was the one who told her gently. She had been pregnant. She had given birth. The child was alive. But because Maya had no identity, the infant had been placed in state custody. The law had required it. It was no one's fault, Loretta said softly, though Maya's heart shattered as if it were. Fragments of memory clawed their way back in brief flashes, wind howling around her. A sunset bleeding across the sky. A hand at her back. She didn't know whose hand. She didn't know why the image made her chest tighten with fear. But she knew one thing as clearly as breath. Someone had tried to kill her. Loretta saw the desperation in her eyes and refused to let Maya be swallowed by a life without a name. She arranged for her to enter a program for survivors with no identification, a place where new beginnings were crafted from broken pieces. There, Loretta helped her choose a name strong enough to carry the weight of a lost life and a stolen child. Maya Winfrey. Standing by the window on her last day in the hospital, Maya watched unfamiliar cars pass on unfamiliar streets. She did not know where she belonged or who she used to be, but she knew one truth rising inside her like a spark refusing to die. She had survived, and someday, when the shadows in her memory finally cleared, she would understand why. The morning Maya left the hospital felt nothing like a beginning. Fog clung low over the parking lot, softening the edges of the world, as if it, too, wasn't sure she was ready to face it. She stepped outside in thin hospital clothes, a paper bag of medical forms tucked under her arm. The words Jane Doe printed at the top stared back at her like a verdict she hadn't agreed to. Loretta Freeman walked beside her, steady and warm, guiding her as though Maya were learning how to walk again. "You haven't lost everything," Loretta told her gently. "Some things find their way back, but first, you have to keep going." Maya tried to believe that, but the world looked painfully empty. She didn't recognize the sky, the ground beneath her feet, or the name people used when speaking about her. Her memories were a blank page someone had torn from her life. She didn't know who she was supposed to miss, who might be searching for her, or if anyone even cared she'd survived. Loretta drove her south to Savannah, to a small community-run center tucked behind a row of old brick houses. It wasn't fancy, just warm lamps, mismatched furniture, and walls covered with hand-painted signs about hope and healing. It existed for people like her, people with nowhere to return to and everything to rebuild. A woman at the desk opened a new file and paused. "What name would you like to use?" Loretta touched Maya's shoulder. "Maya Winfrey," she said softly, offering it like a gift. Maya hesitated, her hand trembling as she signed the form. It felt less like writing a name and more like stepping into a life she didn't yet understand. But it was hers now, the first thing she owned since waking up. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and fragmented terror. Maya woke often in a cold sweat, gasping as flashes of memory slammed through her mind. A brutal rush of wind, water crashing against her skull, a hand pressing firmly between her shoulder blades. She tried to see the man behind that hand. A face flickered, half-formed and shadowed, but never clear. Whenever these memories surfaced, Maya shook uncontrollably until Loretta helped her breathe through the panic. "Your mind is protecting you," Loretta told her. "It'll come back when you're ready, not before." To survive, Maya learned to build a new life from pieces she didn't remember choosing. She worked small jobs, cleaning rooms, bussing tables, stocking shelves, anything that offered enough income to feed herself. Each task humbled her, but she accepted them with quiet resolve. She didn't complain. She didn't break. There was something fierce beneath her fragile appearance, something that refused to collapse even when her world had been erased. Over time, that strength revealed itself in unexpected ways. During group therapy sessions, while others struggled to put words to their pain, Maya understood their feelings with startling clarity. She could trace the shape of someone's grief faster than they could articulate it, noticing tremors in their voice or the way their eyes darted when a memory hurt too much. The counselors noticed it too. One suggested she take introductory psychology courses offered through a local adult education program. Maya agreed, unsure at first, then quickly found herself drawn to the field. Trauma made sense to her, even if she didn't yet understand her own. Loretta helped her apply for tuition support, cheering every milestone. Maya studied late into the night, driven by something deeper than ambition. Her work with survivors grew more meaningful each year. Their stories lit a fire inside her, urging her to keep moving forward, not away from her past, but toward it. Eventually, she became a support worker at the center, guiding women whose lives felt as shattered as hers once had. With every life she helped steady, she felt her own footing return, slow but sure. One evening, after a long day of counseling, Maya found Loretta asleep in a chair, head tilted, mouth softly open, exhausted from caring too much for too many. Something warm fluttered in Maya's chest. Family, she thought. Somehow, she had found family again. But as she wrapped a blanket around Loretta's shoulders, an ache twisted inside her. There was still a child out there, her child whom she had never held, never seen, never named. The emptiness left by that loss pressed harder than any other wound. Standing alone, Maya whispered into the dim room, "One day, I'll remember everything." End quote. And with that promise, something inside her awakened, quiet but powerful, a spark waiting for the moment it would become a flame. 6 years later, the woman who once stepped into the world nameless now stood before a room of survivors, her voice steady, warm, and full of lived truth. Dr. Maya Winfrey had become one of the most respected trauma counselors in Savannah. Women thanked her for giving them strength, for helping them reclaim their voices, for understanding pain in ways few people could. Yet even in the brightest moments of her new life, shadows lingered at the edges of her mind. She still dreamed of cliffs, of sunsets that looked like fire, of a man she could never quite see pushing her into darkness. Every time she tried to press deeper into the memory, a sharp pain bloomed behind her temples, and the vision snapped away. She learned to live with the gaps in her past, but she never made peace with them. Somewhere behind that locked door in her memory was the truth she both needed and feared to uncover. Her career flourished anyway. She spoke at workshops across Georgia, sharing tools for healing from domestic violence and betrayal. Her calm presence and intuitive empathy made her a natural leader. People listened when she spoke, drawn to the quiet conviction in her voice. She had rebuilt herself from nothing, and the world saw strength where she had once seen only loss. But every time she watched a mother cradle her child, or saw a toddler tug at their parent's hand, something sharp twisted in her heart. She still had no idea where her own son was, if he was safe, if he was loved, if he even knew he'd been born. The longing never left her. Sometimes she caught herself pausing during her sessions, wondering if the universe was cruel or simply waiting for the right moment to return what it had taken. Loretta, older now but still vibrant, tried to soothe her gently. "If he's alive, life will lead you back to him," she would say. "Some bonds don't break." That reassurance helped, but never enough. One ordinary evening, Maya and Loretta stopped at a small local diner after a community meeting. They sat in their usual booth, steam rising from their plates, laughter of nearby families filling the air. Then the television above the counter changed to a live political broadcast. A polished smile filled the screen, a familiar face, Damon Carter. Maya's fork slipped from her fingers. The chatter in the diner dissolved into a dull hum as she stared at the man the news anchor praised as a visionary millionaire, a symbol of black success in Atlanta, a widower who survived unimaginable tragedy when his pregnant wife died in a mountain accident years ago. Widower, accident, tragedy. The words ricocheted through her mind, breaking open something she'd spent 6 years trying to remember. The sunset, the cliff, the hand on her back, the moment she fell, and finally Damon's face looking down at her as she plummeted. The memories crashed over her in a single, devastating wave. She saw everything. She felt everything. The betrayal, the terror, the truth. Her breath trembled, but her hands didn't shake. Not this time. She was no longer the frightened woman clinging to life in a river. She was someone rebuilt from fire. As the diner buzzed around her, Maya's gaze hardened. Damon Carter hadn't just hurt her. He had tried to erase her. He had stolen her child, her name, her life. And he was standing on television being celebrated for surviving her death. She straightened in her seat, calm settling over her like a second skin. The time had come. She would return to Atlanta. She would find her son. She would expose Damon Carter for everything he truly was. Maya looked up at the screen one last time, her eyes cold and steady as Damon smiled for his adoring audience. "You think I'm dead," she whispered. "But I'm still here, and I'm coming back for everything." And with that vow, the next chapter of her life and her revenge began. The moment Maya stepped out of the airport and felt the Atlanta heat on her skin, something sharp twisted inside her chest. This was the city where she'd once lived a life she thought was beautiful, where she'd decorated nurseries, hosted charity galas, and held Damon's hand at dinners with people who claimed to admire their love story. It was also the city where Damon Carter stood behind her on a cliff and chose ambition over the mother of his child. The skyline shimmered with polished glass towers, familiar but distant, as though she were walking through a dream she had only halfway awakened from. But she was not the woman who had left Atlanta in a stretcher 6 years ago. She walked with purpose now, her spine straight, her breath even, her heart anchored by a single mission. She wasn't coming back to reclaim her old life. She was here to expose the lie that had replaced it, and to find the child who had been stolen from her before she ever heard his first cry. She secured a modern apartment downtown, high enough to overlook the city lights but private enough to hide her movements. The next morning, she signed her registration as a licensed trauma counselor under the name Dr. Maya Winfrey Carter. The added surname wasn't a sentimental choice. It was a war cry, a quiet declaration that she was stepping back into the arena Damon thought he'd cleared of her. Her resume from Savannah painted the perfect picture. A respected specialist in trauma recovery, a speaker, a counselor, a woman whose life story, at least the one she allowed the world to see, fit seamlessly into professional circles. No one questioned her. No one looked twice at her ID. No one imagined a political figure in Atlanta had a wife who had survived her own murder attempt. Her first week back, she drove from one state office to another, combing through files of infants born to unidentified mothers around the time she had been hospitalized. Most cases led nowhere: wrong dates, wrong races, wrong medical complications. But Maya kept searching, the determination pulsing through her like a heartbeat. A mother's intuition told her he was alive, somewhere out there, breathing, growing, living without knowing she existed. The breakthrough came by chance or fate when she attended a fundraiser for orphaned and displaced children. The room was filled with donors, sipping champagne and offering polished sympathy to the cause. But Maya's attention sharpened when she met Patricia Perry, the director of one of the largest child support foundations in the state. Patricia spoke passionately about their programs, then paused as though remembering something. "We have a child who's always weighed on my mind," she said. "A little boy 6 years old now, born premature. His mother was never identified." Maya's breath slipped from her lungs. The details matched too well. The timeline, the condition, the anonymity. She could barely whisper, "Do you have his file?" Patricia led her to a back office and handed her a confidential folder. The moment Maya opened it, her world tilted. The photo staring back at her showed a boy with deep brown eyes, soft curls, and skin the same warm shade as hers. Caleb Washington, 6 years old, healthy, bright, fostered by a loving black family in a quiet neighborhood. The room blurred as tears filled her eyes. For the first time in 6 years, she felt a piece of herself click back into place. This was her son. She could feel the truth in her bones. She drove to the Hudson's neighborhood the next day, staying hidden across the street as Caleb chased a ball down the sidewalk. He laughed freely, the sound soft and pure, and it nearly brought her to her knees. She pressed a fist to her lips to hold back a sob. She couldn't run to him. She couldn't claim him. Not yet. She needed to be steady, strategic, invisible, until the truth could be revealed. Patricia later approached her with a request Maya hadn't dared hope for. Caleb had been showing signs of emotional distress since losing his foster mother in a sudden accident. The program needed a trauma specialist to step in. Maya's heart hammered as she nodded. I can help him. During their first session, Caleb sat across from her, wide-eyed and quiet. Then he reached out and slipped his hand into hers, small and trusting. Will you come back? He asked softly. Tears burned behind her eyes, but Maya forced her voice steady. I will always come back. Hesway. And in that moment, a bond long severed began to thread itself back together. Fragile but unbreakable, learning her son was alive gave Maya a strength she hadn't felt since before the cliff, steady, fierce, and burning with purpose. But finding him was only half the battle. The other half required stepping into the shadow of the man who had tried to kill her. Damon Carter wasn't just wealthy now, he was powerful. A rising political figure with a polished image sculpted by a woman as ambitious and calculating as he was. To defeat him, Maya needed evidence, proof, and proximity. She studied his campaign from afar at first. Damon was running for Atlanta City Council, standing in front of cheering crowds with tailored suits and perfect speeches about community uplift and second chances. Vanessa Jolie, his PR strategist and mistress, hovered nearby in every broadcast, sharp-eyed, polished, always watching the angles. Damon projected unshakable confidence, but Maya noticed the tension hidden beneath his smile, the tiny cracks in his composure, the twitch in his jaw when the past was mentioned. She could work with those cracks. She submitted her professional dossier to the campaign's hiring committee, framing herself as an expert in emotional resilience training, something high-profile candidates often sought. Within days, she received an invitation to meet. Damon didn't recognize her name. He didn't recognize her voice on the phone, and he had no reason to suspect the ghost he'd buried beneath that cliff had returned. The day of the meeting, Maya walked into the campaign office with calm precision. Damon stood near the window, reviewing notes, radiating confidence until he turned and saw her. For a brief second, something flickered in his eyes, confusion, familiarity, unease, before he masked it with a politician's smile. Dr. Winfrey Carter, he greeted her. Thank you for coming. Winfrey Carter. Hearing him say it felt like reclaiming stolen ground. Their conversation unfolded smoothly at first. Maya spoke with authority and warmth, guiding Damon into discussions about stress management under public scrutiny. But each time she gently steered the topic toward personal trauma or past regrets. Damon's mask slipped. His fingers fidgeted. His gaze darted away. His voice thinned. Maya watched every detail, storing each reaction like a weapon she would later sharpen. He didn't know she was profiling him. He didn't know she was probing for weaknesses. He didn't know he was sitting across from the woman he had nearly killed. Across the room, Vanessa Jolie observed them with quiet suspicion. Her instincts were razor-sharp. She didn't trust anyone near Damon unless she had vetted them herself. Something about Maya unsettled her, though she couldn't articulate why. She whispered to an aide to pull whatever records they could find on this new consultant. They found nothing. Too clean, too perfect, too controlled. Meanwhile, Maya began unraveling the threads of Damon's crimes. At the insurance office, she requested archived files under the guise of a policy audit. They handed her the documents without hesitation. She held the papers in her hands, the policy Damon had taken out on her life, the massive payout he would have received, the signatures dated mere weeks before he pushed her. She scanned the pages, feeling more anger than pain. Later, after a community lecture, a man approached her. Doctor? Winfrey Carter? He asked, offering a card. Marcus Clooney, investigative journalist. She froze for a heartbeat, then took the card. I've been digging into Damon Carter's history, Marcus said quietly, and something about the story of his wife's accident never added up. I think you know more than the public does. Maya held his gaze and made the decision that would seal her path forward. If you're serious, she said, we need to talk. Why work? That night, standing at her apartment window overlooking Atlanta's glowing skyline, Maya stared at Damon's campaign billboard towering above the city. He smiled down with the confidence of a man who believed he'd outrun his past. She whispered into the night, steady and certain, "I didn't survive for nothing. This time, you answer for everything." And as the city lights flickered below, the quiet beginning of war settled between them. The cafe was quiet enough that Maya could hear the soft clinking of mugs behind the counter as she slid a folder across the table toward Marcus Clooney. The investigative journalist leaned forward, his brows tightening as he examined the documents she'd collected. Insurance records, bank transfers, a printed screenshot of a leaked text message thread from Damon's campaign staff. Pieces of a truth she'd spent months stitching together. "This isn't just a cheating scandal," Marcus murmured, flipping through the pages. "This is organized, planned, financial, political." Maya nodded, her jaw tight. She knew Damon had tried to kill her, but seeing the evidence laid out, seeing the preparation, the precision, the cold calculation behind every step, made the betrayal feel fresh and scorching. Marcus tapped a line on the insurance policy. The payout on your life was unusually high, 5 times the standard recommendation. He signed it a week after he started appearing in public with Vanessa Jolie. The words struck her like a blow. Damon hadn't been acting out of impulse. He had engineered her death long before that final trip. Everything, the sudden affection, the baby moon suggestion, the gentle apologies, had been staged to lower her guard. Marcus continued digging. And Derek Eastwood. This man has a history. Disbarred for evidence tampering. Works as a private investigator for wealthy clients who want their problems to disappear. He's been connected to at least 3 suspicious accidents. 3 other lives bent or broken because of the same man who helped Damon push her off that cliff. The idea made Maya's stomach twist with revulsion. Marcus handed her another file. Rescuer reports from 6 years ago. "This part is even worse. Look." Her eyes scanned the document. Only 1 pair of footprints near the cliff's edge. No signs of a slip. No disturbance that suggested she'd lost her balance naturally. And then another detail. Damon had insisted within hours that she was likely dead, even though rescue efforts were still active and incomplete. "He wanted them to stop looking," Maya whispered. "He knew exactly where I landed." "Yes," Marcus said quietly. "He did." A storm churned beneath Maya's composure. Grief, rage, disbelief. She had spent years trying to rebuild her life without remembering the moment she lost it. Now, the truth stood before her, undeniable and vile. And the man who orchestrated it was smiling on billboards across the city, promising integrity to thousands of voters. She steadied her breath. Anger would not win this war, strategy would. She returned to the campaign office the next day with a flawless professional mask. Every time she spoke in a meeting, Damon's shoulders stiffened. Every time her voice slipped into a certain cadence, his eyes darted away as if something in him recognized her. He didn't understand why he felt threatened, but he did. And that was the advantage she needed. During one small group session, Maya asked about his personal triggers under stress. Damon's hand trembled on the pen. She asked about guilt, about fear of exposure, about unresolved emotional wounds. His answers were clipped, uneasy, drifting. She could feel the panic simmering beneath his polished exterior. Vanessa noticed immediately. She watched Damon with a hunter's suspicion, her gaze tracking every micro-reaction. Something about Maya unsettled her deeply. When she ordered Derek to dig into Dr. Winfrey Carter, she expected to uncover incompetence, scandal, or illusion. Instead, she found nothing. No past, no errors, no cracks. The clean slate only made the feeling worse. Vanessa couldn't shake the sense that Maya resembled someone Damon had once described in drunken late-night confessions, the wife he lost. Meanwhile, Maya pushed deeper. She returned to the small mountain hospital and met privately with an administrator who recognized her face not as Maya Winfrey Carter, but as the unconscious Jane Doe wheeled into their ER 6 years earlier. The administrator handed her a hard drive containing archived footage from the night she was admitted. Back in her car, Maya watched the grainy video of her body broken, soaked, barely breathing, being hauled out of an ambulance. Doctors shouting, nurses scrambling, Loretta running beside the gurney. It was like watching the death of a stranger she somehow knew intimately. Her throat tightened, not with fear, but with a clarity sharper than steel. She sent Marcus a copy of the footage. "This," she wrote, "is the moment I died, and the moment I was born again." Minutes later, Marcus called her. "Maya, Damon's polling numbers just spiked. He might win this election. The higher he climbs, the harder he'll be to touch. You need to be careful. She stared out at the horizon, Atlanta's skyline glowing like a battleground waiting for dawn. Somewhere out there, Damon was tightening his grip on power, and she was tightening hers on the truth. The chapter closed in silence, leaving only the question pulsing between them. Who would strike first, Maya or Damon? The night of the fundraising gala arrived with the kind of polished glamour that Atlanta's elite adored. Expensive gowns, sparkling chandeliers, champagne that flowed like running water. For Maya, it felt like walking into the past, only this time, she was not there to play the role of the politician's perfect wife. She was entering the wolf's den as the predator. The moment she stepped through the doors, every conversation seemed to pause. Her confidence was unmistakable. Steady strides, lifted chin, an aura that commanded the room. Even Vanessa Jolie's gaze snapped toward her with sharp, instinctive caution. But it was Damon who reacted as though he'd seen a ghost. He froze mid-sentence, color draining from his face. His eyes trailed over her black gown, her calm expression, the controlled precision in her stare. Something inside him recognized her, even if his conscious mind refused to accept it. He fumbled his words, earning a confused glance from the donor he'd been charming. Maya felt the shift instantly. Damon's guilt leaked through every crack, his trembling fingers, his twitching jaw, the sweat beading along his hairline. She could smell fear on him, and she wielded it like a weapon. Later, during a private conversation arranged by campaign staff, Maya eased her voice into something soft, contemplative. Men under pressure, she said, especially men of color in the public eye. They carry grief in ways they can't always admit. Unresolved losses can corrode a career from the inside. The words were deliberate. Damon swallowed hard, his throat bobbing. What kind of losses? He asked, barely above a whisper. Maya held his gaze. The kind you think no one will ever discover. His breath hitched. He looked away. She watched the collapse begin quiet, incremental, inevitable. Vanessa interrupted moments later, stepping between them like a guard dog disguised in couture. Her smile was warm, her eyes were knives. Dr. Winfrey Carter, she greeted. So nice to finally meet you. Maya returned the smile without blinking. The pleasure is mine. To stand. They exchanged polite, meaningless words, but beneath the surface, a different battle played out. Vanessa tried to gauge Maya's intentions, her background, her vulnerabilities, but Maya gave her nothing, no fear, no deference, no cracks to pry open. Vanessa's unease sharpened with every passing second. Then Derek Eastwood arrived. He didn't approach, but he lingered in the shadows of the room, watching Maya with a narrowed gaze. Maya felt his stare but refused to acknowledge it. Her blood chilled at the sight of him, the man who had cleaned up the aftermath of her attempted murder, the man who had likely confirmed her death. But she kept her expression smooth, her breath even. Throughout the night, Maya observed Damon, Vanessa, and Derek with professional precision. She watched the way Vanessa leaned in when Damon faltered, the way Damon avoided direct eye contact with her, the way Derek's eyes flicked toward exits and corners like a man accustomed to danger. She wrote mental notes, analyzing every gesture. This wasn't a gala. It was a battlefield dressed in silk and champagne. As the evening pressed on, Maya maneuvered herself into Damon's line of sight again and again, subtly forcing him to face her. Each encounter chipped away at his composure until he seemed ready to bolt. Vanessa noticed everything, the shaky breathing, the erratic blinking, the agitation growing under Damon's skin. She had never seen him unravel like this. By the time Maya headed toward the exit, Damon broke. He rushed after her, his voice trembling. Have I seen you somewhere before?" She turned slowly, meeting his eyes with calm, merciless clarity. "Some people you think are gone forever," she said, her tone low and even, "but you'd be surprised who finds their way back." Damon's face drained of all remaining color. Behind him, Vanessa stiffened, watching, calculating, realizing that something far more dangerous than a political opponent had entered their world. Maya walked away, leaving Damon rooted in fear, knowing she had just tilted the balance of power, knowing the real war had finally begun. Damon had not slept since the gala. Every time he closed his eyes, Maya's voice echoed back to him, soft, calm, deadly. "Some people you think are gone forever." The words coiled around his throat like a tightening rope. He jolted awake again and again, drenched in sweat, haunted by the image of Maya falling, by the look she had given him before the world swallowed her. For the first time in 6 years, he felt the ground beneath his ambition shift. Vanessa noticed immediately. Damon snapped at volunteers, missed cues in interviews, stared blankly at teleprompters. She cornered him in the campaign office, eyes sharp with irritation. "Cut ties with her," she ordered. "Whoever this Dr. Winfrey Carter is, she's throwing you off. Fix it." Damon shook his head too quickly. "No, she's just a consultant. I'm fine." "You're not fine," Vanessa hissed. "And if you fall apart now, after everything I've built, I swear." He walked away before she finished, because he didn't dare tell her the truth. Maya Winfrey Carter felt familiar in a way that clawed at the inside of his skull, a familiarity that terrified him. Meanwhile, Derek Eastwood had begun to dig. At first, he found nothing too clean, too perfect. Then he traced a medical record from a remote hospital to a Jane Doe brought in the night Damon reported his wife missing. The file was thin, missing identifiers, but something about it unsettled him. He printed the report and stared at it long into the night. "If she survived," he muttered. "If she actually survived." Across the city, Maya sat with Marcus Clooney in his dim apartment, the two of them surrounded by papers, hard drives, and notes scribbled in frantic lines. She handed him everything. The camera footage from the hospital, the insurance contract, copies of emails between Damon and Vanessa, Derek's old case files. Piece by piece, Marcus aligned the timeline like a puzzle no one had dared assemble until now. "It's all here," he finally said. "Intent, motive, opportunity, conspiracy." A breath escaped Maya, not relief, but cold affirmation. She had always known. Now the world would know too. Then Marcus lifted one final file. "This is the worst of it," he said, pressing play on an audio recording. Damon's voice filled the room, low and resolved. "After this weekend, everything will be easier." Vanessa's voice answering, "Just get it done. We'll handle the rest." The room seemed to tilt. Maya felt the echo of that push, felt the air leave her lungs again as she fell, but she did not cry. Not anymore. "Thank you," she whispered instead. "Now, we finish this." She scheduled a private session with Damon the next day. When he entered her office, she could smell fear coming off him in waves. She spoke gently, weaving her words like traps, questions about guilt, secrets, the burden of past mistakes. Damon's hands trembled uncontrollably. Sweat gathered along his temples. "You're carrying something heavy," Maya said quietly. "Something eating you alive." His eyes widened, and for a moment, she saw the cliff reflected in them, saw the instant he had decided her life was worth less than his future. She added softly, "Sometimes, memories don't stay buried. Sometimes they crawl back up the cliff." Color drained from his face. He stammered an excuse and fled her office. Across town, Vanessa replayed an old recording Damon had once made while drunk, mumbling about Maya, about the accident, about regrets he never explained. And suddenly, the pieces clicked together. She stormed into Damon's home, shaking. "Tell me the truth," she demanded. "Is she your wife?" Damon said nothing. His silence told her everything. Hours later, Maya's phone buzzed. Damon's voice was thin, shaking. "I need to see you. Tonight, at my house. We need to talk." She knew what the meeting meant. Danger, opportunity, justice. She sent Marcus the address, tucked the recorder and camera into her bag, and whispered to herself as she walked out the door. Tonight, it ends. Damon's new mansion stood like a monument to corruption, glass walls, marble floors, and a silence thick enough to suffocate. Maya stepped inside, her heartbeat steady, her hands sure. She had walked into this man's home before as his wife. Tonight, she walked in as his reckoning. Damon waited in the center of the living room, shoulders shaking, eyes wide with a terror he couldn't hide. "Who are you?" he whispered. "Tell me who you really are." Maya approached him slowly, each step echoing with 6 years of stolen life. "You don't recognize my voice?" she asked. "You should. You heard it right before you pushed me." He staggered backward. No, you died. You were gone. I checked." "You checked to make sure," she corrected softly. "But you failed." "Oh." His knees nearly gave out. "Maya." Oh God. The recorder in her pocket captured every word. She stood before him, forcing him to meet her gaze. "Say it," she demanded. Say what you did. The dam inside him finally broke. Words poured out ugly, frantic, desperate. He confessed to the insurance policy, the pressure from Vanessa, the political aspirations, the push on the cliff. He cried, begged, admitted everything. Maya did not flinch. She had imagined this moment too many times to give him the satisfaction of seeing her shaken. Then a door slammed. Vanessa stormed in, dragging Derek behind her. What did you tell her? She screamed. Derek pulled out a gun, aiming it at Maya with a hand that did not tremble. Vanessa shouted, Get rid of her now. Maya took a step back but did not panic. She had planned for this too. A soft click from the device in her pocket sent a signal through the house, and within seconds, police lights flashed outside, followed by the pounding of feet and shouted commands. Officers burst inside just as Derek's finger tightened on the trigger. They tackled him to the ground, the gun skidding across the floor. Vanessa tried to run, cursing, but an officer grabbed her, twisting her arms behind her back. The camera recorded everything. The rage, the panic, the threats, proof of conspiracy that even the best lawyers couldn't erase. Damon collapsed onto the floor, sobbing uncontrollably as an officer read him his rights. He begged Maya to forgive him. She simply watched, her face calm, not triumphant, not cruel. Empty. Damon Carter had died for her the night he pushed her. Tonight was only the burial. By morning, the world knew everything. Marcus Clooney's investigation exploded across national headlines. The black real estate king of Atlanta had orchestrated his pregnant wife's murder. The city was stunned, the country outraged. And Maya Winfrey, no longer Jane Doe, no longer a ghost, stood before cameras as a survivor whose strength refused to be silenced. Days later, Maya walked up the steps of the Hudson's home. Her breath trembled for the first time since the cliff. The door opened, and Caleb looked at her with wide, hopeful eyes. "Are you really my mom?" he asked. "Yes," she breathed, dropping to her knees as he ran into her arms. Tears spilled freely, tears of joy, of grief, of rebirth. "Yes, baby, I'm your mother." The weight of 6 lost years melted the moment she felt his small arms wrap around her neck. She stayed in Atlanta, not because of Damon, not because of revenge, but because this city now held her future. She rebuilt her practice, advocated for survivors, and walked Caleb to school every morning with her hand wrapped around his. One morning, as golden sunlight washed over them, Maya paused and looked up at the sky, the same sky she had fallen beneath 6 years earlier. This time, she walked forward, toward life, toward healing, toward everything Damon had tried to steal but failed to take. And the story of Maya Winfrey ended not with a fall, but with a beginning. ChatGPT said, "Strength often shows up in the smallest ways, a quiet breath, a steady step, a choice to keep going even when the world feels too heavy. Life doesn't promise an easy path, but it does offer the chance to rise again, to rebuild something gentler and stronger from everything that tried to break us. And sometimes, the simple act of not giving up becomes its own kind of triumph." If you're listening right now, maybe on a peaceful night or during a long ride home, tell me in the comments. What's one thing that helped you keep moving when life got tough? Your story might be the reminder someone else needs. And if these stories make you feel understood, comforted, or simply less alone, remember to follow the channel. We'll keep sharing these journeys together.